How's it going, everybody, and welcome to How Good Is It Really? My name is Jeremiah.
I'm Luke.
And today we're going to be talking about episode 6. Episode 6 of season 4 of Stranger Things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Onward and upward.
Yes,
the slog continues.
We're approaching it. We have 3 episodes left.
Yes.
We were talking about before we got started. It's like we kind of painted ourselves in a corner a little bit, deciding that we wanted to talk about each episode individually. It felt like a good decision at the time because, admittedly, there is a lot to talk about in each episode.
But literally,
it's just taken a lot of time to get through because we had to take a couple weeks off and we just have so much other stuff going on. But it's still enjoyable. It was still a great show.
Yes. They're still fun. It's just I haven't even been able to watch the final episode just because I've been so invested.
Oh, so you haven't even actually finished it yet?
No, I haven't even finished the season yet.
Well, good. Like, don't until we actually get there. That way it'll be a little fresh.
I mean, you're probably going to get your wish anyway because every time I go to turn it off, my wife's like, no, I'm not ready. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine then.
You mean turn it on?
Yeah, every time I go to turn it on, she's like, "No, I can't watch it yet. I'm not ready." Oh, whatever. I can't do this anymore. And then I just turn the video game on.
That's okay. We'll get. That means we might get there about the same time.
Probably.
All right. Well, let's just give our initial thoughts then for the episode before we dive into spoilers. So,
all
right. Non-spoilers. This episode, we get a little more that happens.
Yeah.
In this episode than the previous one. A little less setup. I like a lot of the humor that's in this episode, some of the small moments that
there are some pretty good jokes, nerd references, and things that you'll pick up on.
Some fun references and stuff that the whole show is
just one giant love letter to fandoms everywhere.
It is kind of that, but at the same time, I don't want it to pretend like it's just that. Like, it's not just references; it's also really good storytelling.
Right? No, it's not. What is the book? Ready Player One. Which is literally nothing but just endless pop culture references.
It's just
member berries. It's just 300 pages of member berries, which I will say I absolutely loved the first book. The second book had no idea what it wanted to be.
Oh, yeah? And
I stopped reading it because it got insufferably woke. Like, it was unbelievably woke. And the narrative just didn't make any sense. Like, it just... The first book was cool. It made sense. It was like, yay, 80s. Everywhere.
Good job,
Nothing
man.
but 80s. It was like a hand grenade of 80s. And like Prince music was just blaring in your ears and, crazy colors and short shorts. And then the second book was awful. But yeah, no, Stranger Things is definitely not that. It is starting to get a little bit more hardcore, I feel like, the later the episodes go, which is par for the course with Stranger Things.
Yeah, Stranger Things does always progress as the seasons go on, where they kind of, even though... Like, this season is by far, like, the most intense they've gone with any of it.
True.
Which is a good thing. But I very much appreciate it.
But by and large,
but there's always a little bit of a ramp up throughout the course of the season, as is with any show. This isn't anything new.
It's very Lord of the Rings-esque, actually, where, like, there's a very, like a calm before the storm, and then it just gets really out of hand faster and faster towards the end.
Calm any of the downbeats have been.
First 2 episodes.
Well, I mean, the first 2 episodes, we get 2 kids that die.
Well, that's the thing, though, is it's like
with our main characters, yes. With our main characters, there hasn't been a whole lot actually happening, because we get Chrissy dying, we get Fred dying, and then in last episode, we got Patrick dying, which is kind of where we start here.
Well, and there's also, like, the undercurrent of just craziness that's always, like, bubbling underneath the surface, but you get kind of that illusion of calm, if you will, above it.
Sure. Yeah, I can kind of get that.
So anyway, we'll get right into it. So this episode's going to pick up.
Do you want to run into spoilers then? And just do the thing?
We might as well. Yeah. I mean, they're not really going to give away too much. This episode's not too terribly rich when it comes to, like, lore. It's more just carryovers from the previous episode. But yeah, let's just go through each group like we did in the previous episode.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and get into kind of, I guess, the spoiler talk. If you haven't seen it, why are you watching? Go watch it.
Yeah.
If you have seen it, good.
Then you know.
But yeah, the first group, let's go to Joyce and Murray. I know you love Joyce and Murray together.
I really do. Really do love Joyce and Murray. And Yuri. Great character.
Yeah,
really
and we get a lot more of Yuri in this episode, in the last couple episodes since he got introduced.
To let him get eaten by Russian bears.
Yeah, because we find them and they crash the plane at the last episode, and we get them threatening to just leave Yuri kind of tied up next to the tree. It's like, we don't have to kill you. We just leave you here.
Yeah.
And the bears will get you.
Yeah. Bears, wolves, or something. It's like Siberia. Like.
Yeah. Well, they're in Kamchatka, right?
Yeah, Kamchatka. So wherever in Russia they are, but I mean, like even like the rabbits are carnivorous.
Yeah, because Siberia is more inland. Kamchatka's the coast.
Oh, okay, okay. So it'd be closer to like the Korean border then, like right on like Manchuria, right there.
Because Kamchatka is the province of the USSR in the 80s that is just across like what is the Bering Strait from Alaska.
Look at him. Geography lessons, people.
Or I could be completely wrong. I just made it up.
It could have fooled me. I'm a history major, people. I don't look at maps. So anyway, that's where they're going to pick up with them, and there really isn't too much that happens with them at all, honestly.
I really enjoy their threatening to leave Murray to die, like we talked about.
Yuri, they threatened to leave Yuri.
Did I say Murray?
You said Murray, yeah.
Yuri.
It's a little bit of foreshadowing there, actually.
Yeah, given how the end of their story in this episode ends up with them kind of trading places or deciding to trade places. They do make it into the church.
Yes.
Where all of Yuri's contraband is.
And they come up with a plan to get into Kamchatka to try to rescue Hopper, which seems absolutely asinine.
Yeah, it seems ridiculous, but I mean,
once you see kind of what they do, it really actually
it does.
It's a good idea.
It's not a bad plan
because Murray speaks fluent Russian.
Yeah, and not a bad accent.
He pulls it off. And yeah, I mean that's just where they go, and then they don't tell you; you just see it. Where they dress Murray or in Yuri's clothes.
Yeah,
they
don't
shave
actually
his beard except for the mustache.
Right, so that's they don't even get there yet.
No, they just swap hats, right, and then they follow up on that a little bit later. But that's where their story ends in this episode. Where they're
that's pretty much all we get with them is they're not even leaving to the gate yet. Like they just make the plan in the church.
Oh, okay.
Like this is what we're gonna do, and they haven't even like changed their clothes yet.
Oh, okay.
We don't get a whole lot of Joyce and Murray.
Yeah,
and Yuri.
The best parts are definitely when they just first after the crash are just talking and just threatening Yuri. That's basically it.
But then staying in Kamchatka, we also get Hopper.
Yes.
Finally,
something happens in the prison of endless conversations and snow.
Well, a little bit happens. Not a whole lot happens because we just get more conversations. We get more conversations in different parts of the prison now.
Yeah. And a fist fight. We get a fist fight. Because prison fist fights are cool.
Yeah, we get one fight. 2 fights? Maybe
yeah, because he eggs Antonov on so that he can
does.
start
he
the fight
eggs
with the
Antonov so he can
guards.
start the fight and get the lighter.
Yes.
Because he does that after they have their dinner together where he kind of is overhearing them talk about this beast that they have that, you know, one of the Russian prisoners is talking about how they've done this before. Like he saw like 5 prisoners come into the cell, you know, just like they did. And then, you know, the day after, you know,
all gone.
They sent him out, like, you know, fed him this great big dinner. And then that night they all died. Like they fed him this beast kind of thing. So
and Hopper tells them that they're basically fattening them up for the feast before they let the monster loose on them so that they're rested and fed so that they can fight better so that they can train this thing. And he's like, what you're doing is basically pointless. Like you're just a fatted calf for the slaughter.
Exactly. Like you're not here to like train the monster for war. You're here just for food. Like,
yeah, you're here to like basically make the monster stronger because weak prey.
Yeah, not by fighting, just by being able to eat you after you've had this wonderful meal. That's basically
because then you're going to have all those nutrients that are
everything a growing monster needs. I think is what he says.
It's pretty messed up. And clearly he is very cynical about their chances.
But I do like that the actual moment in the atmosphere of that conversation because
Antonov clearly
is just such a buzzkill. I mean, he brings really the mood down a lot.
Well, and Antonov clearly is starting to pick up on the fact that he's not quite as crazy as he thought he was.
Right. Yeah.
And he's like, oh, crap. I think this guy's for real. And what's happening is probably legit. And then obviously that makes sense because then he makes the plan shortly thereafterwards with him to like steal the lighter. He
doesn't even make the plan with Antonov. He doesn't know.
Oh, okay. So Antonov just goes with it.
He just goes with it because Hopper's just trying to like egg him on, talking about, you know, calling his son stupid and, you know, because
saying he's a worthless father.
And brings up his wife, and Antonov just snaps and like dives at him, and then creates this little scuffle where he's able to like tackle a guard and steal the lighter, which we saw him using to light a cigarette as they walked in the hallway, so he knew he had it.
And he did pocket the bottle of vodka that he picked up from the dinner table, which was the only thing that he
when
took
he feigned
from the
to
table.
pass out, he picks up one bottle, takes a drink from it, feigns to like pass out and fall on the floor where he's just hiding the bottle. Then he gets back up and grabs a second bottle. So well planned out by him.
Because he knows fire's the only thing that the monster's afraid of.
Yeah.
Like fire's it. So that's pretty much it. And then Antonov kind of has this moment where he's like, "Oh, crazy American's not quite so crazy after all. Maybe we have an actual shot at this."
Yeah, not as off his kilter as I may have thought.
That's 2, man, right there. 2 of the 4 groups. I mean, because that's it. We kind of end their story right there.
Yeah, most of what happens does go on with the Mike
Van Gang.
The Van Gang and Hawkins gang.
Yep.
Where most of the stuff takes about. Are there any standout moments in this episode for you that you want to?
I think for me, the biggest ones are when they're all talking together at Skull Rock, and you just get to see some more pop culture references, which I always appreciate.
Yeah.
But also, there's just a lot of interaction between all the different characters, both old and returning cast, and you get to see some really good drama unfold there, where Nancy and Robin are relaying what they know from Victor Creel, and they're all coming up with a plan, and then Dustin has this wild moment of inspiration where he remembers that the compass behaves strangely around gates, which they learned from the very first season. Lucas did, actually.
Yep.
He figured out that the compass wigs out around gates, and so Dustin figures out that that's what's going on. There must be a gate nearby. And then he puts 2 and 2 together that, like, it must be the site of the killings. And so they decide to go to Lover's Lake, which is where, in the episode that happened before this, we saw...
That's where Patrick dies.
Patrick got murdered by Vecna.
Yep.
And there's a couple jokes there. You remember them a little better than I do.
They were also able to... beforehand, able to pretty well, judging off the time that Patrick died, because that's when Eddie fell in the water,
right?
And the time that all of their flashlights were kind of going crazy in the last episode.
Yeah, and the top floor.
At the same time, they're able to kind of put together where it's like, okay, clearly Vecna's the one that's actually like...
It's
when he's doing this, you can actually sense like his power and the things that go on through the lights and stuff, which has kind of been an ongoing thing for Stranger Things. It's always the lights.
Yep.
Which is nice that there's at least some kind of tell.
Yeah.
There's a way to tell. So they've pieced that together. You're like, okay, Vecna was like in the attic of this old house, like at the moment when Patrick died.
Correct.
And so that was actually him doing it. So they know that they can kind of track him in that way and be able to, not really sense, but basically
and they
track
also,
where he is based on the power that he's using.
Well, don't they also put 2 and 2 together that Elle is always at her most vulnerable when she is psychically projecting, when she's astral projecting?
Yeah.
And so they postulate that Vecna
I think they had that conversation in this episode.
I think so. I can't remember, though. But I think it was either this one or the following episode.
Yeah, definitely one of the two. But they do bring up how... Same thing with Elle, where he's kind of, projecting into someone's mind.
Because I think it tied into, like, why they're looking for the gate in the first place, because they're going to try to, like, go after him and kill him, obviously.
Right, because we can... there's a gate, and they have a way to actually get to the Upside Down, and we know he's basically incapacitated because Elle is more vulnerable when she's kind of projecting into someone's mind, so Vecna should be as well, is their thinking.
And maybe that happens in the following episode, but that's really not, like... It's not really a spoiler.
I feel like that. I'm pretty sure they do touch on it a little bit.
They do. Maybe they elaborate on it further in the following episode.
They definitely do in the following episode, because that's when they come up with their whole like plan of what to actually do.
Right.
But the whole idea of just like going to the Upside Down, beating Vecna, like they do have that thought for sure. Because when they get to Lover's Lake, there, Steve finally gets to not be the babysitter.
Yes.
Because it's Robin, Nancy, Eddie, and Steve that head off on the boat. Much to the chagrin of Dustin, who just stands on the shore, flipping him off.
And Max and Lucas.
Yeah, I don't think they cared all that much.
No, but Dustin clearly feels left out because it's like it's Steve and him. Like they've been doing everything together for the past like 2.5 seasons. So, like obviously Dustin really looks up to Steve and wants to like emulate his behavior. So
right,
because he definitely feels left out.
They're rowing out into the lake. And eventually the compass is just like, spinning in a circle. Like, it's apparent they're probably over where the gate is. So Steve takes off his shirt to jump in, and I love what the kids think. It was just funny what the kids say back on the shore. It was like, I think it was Lucas that makes something. Man, when did Steve get so hairy?
Yeah.
And Dustin's like, I know, I've been telling him to tame that jungle. And like Max just automatically says, let me see, and grabs the binoculars out of Lucas's hands and just like stands there, and Lucas and Dustin are just like, wait. Just completely lost. Just completely lost.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
But basically, Steve gets to the bottom, which I must point out, that lake is either incredibly shallow or Steve is one heck of a swimmer. Because that's like 15 feet, maybe 20 feet straight down, and the amount of water pressure at the bottom, like without like some proper diving training, that would have really hurt. Like really hurt. And he's just like chilling, swimming around, looking for, stuff down there, and then finds the opening, goes through it, and then gets like yanked out the other side because it's inverted, so he gets like pulled back to the surface, which happens to be like a little puddle.
Well, first he gets down there and he swims back up.
Right, and then he gets yanked down and pulled through.
Yeah, that's right. Because he swims back up, we see the little tentacle like reach through after him, so he tells him like, "Hey, I found the gate."
And then he gets pulled down.
He just gets sucked right back down, and pulled through where gravity kind of flips
inverts
itself, so he's falling through, and then he's falling up and then back.
Yeah, I get like a Pirates of the Caribbean up is down kind of thing.
A little bit, yeah.
So it's cool. And then he ends up in a puddle, and he's in an empty Lover's Lake. And there are like abandoned boats everywhere and the vines everywhere. Mm-hmm. And they actually do have a conversation. No, this doesn't happen yet. Never mind. At that point, Steve is just obviously out of his element. He is bare-chested, no shoes, with no weapons, and these little like hawk bat things start like flying
Demobats.
In. Yeah, and they're mean, they're rough, and basically they start attacking Steve. He's able to fend one of them off with the oar, but then they take him down, and they're just ripping into him. You don't know if he's going to live or die. But then the rest of the older group decide to jump in after him. And they all,
so Nancy jumps in first,
followed by Robin, and then reluctantly Eddie follows shortly thereafterwards.
Yes, very reluctantly.
And they all go through, but you don't see anything until the following episode, so we won't give too much away there.
This episode like ends right with Steve getting torn apart, presumably being attacked and held down by the Demobats.
Yeah, one's like really strangling him as the other two like bite into his sides,
taking, like a chunk out of his side.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. So we don't know if Steve's gonna live or die yet. Obviously, if you've watched, then you know. But if you haven't, go watch the 6th episode or 7th episode, I believe. But that's pretty much where it ends for them.
Yeah, one of the moments of the episode that I don't know. It felt weird the first time I watched it. It felt weird the second time I watched it. I just think they I don't know. It doesn't play the way that they want it to. I guess is the stuff with Susie.
Yeah.
Not the stuff with Susie.
It kind of...
The stuff with Susie and the stuff with Eden and the stuff with their dad works. It's just like them walking through the house when they first get there and just the plethora of children running around screaming goes on just a little too long.
We live in Utah.
It's just a little too long.
And we can tell you straight up that stereotype is there for a reason. Like, Mormon families are known for having like 1 million children. And they are unruly and they are chaotic and they are very... very vibrant, and so like
it's just a bit much.
Like the two kids like play acting like Shakespeare, followed by the other two kids that are like doing a movie scene, and then you have like the wild child that's running around constantly turning off the breakers.
Yeah, and then you have the other two that are cooking. Then you have the one that's supposed to be watching them.
That is just kind of out of it, smoking pot.
There's the two that are fighting in the entryway.
Yeah.
There's the one
7
that
children
Shirley's
altogether.
running around. There's the two that are cooking. There's the two that are filming the scene. There's Eden, who's the oldest, who's supposed to be watching him. There's Susie, who's like second. So at least 9 kids.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 8 or 9. Yeah. That's not an exaggeration. I know Mormon families with like 9 children. So
yeah. Yeah,
it did play a little over the
top.
Stereotype
exists for a reason, but it's just like it was just a little much. Like I get it, but I don't need to see all of them.
Also, I might point out, like, where was the mom in this whole interaction? Like, Susie's mom's just, like, nowhere to be found. Like, I assume she's just out doing something.
I assume so.
But the dad clearly either works from home or is just home. He's just fat mustache guy.
Yeah.
And he has taken away Susie's computer, which we find out that she got busted for dating an apostate, which is really funny. Again, if you are familiar with Mormon culture, then you are in the know to know.
I think she calls him agnostic.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is what she says.
Not an apostate. Yeah, that's a little
very different things.
That's a little too deep into Mormon
culture.
Very
different things.
Agnostic. Yeah. But yeah, her dad flips out because his 14-year-old daughter is dating this kid from the other side of the country that happens to not know if there's a God or not.
So she takes away...
That's what agnostic means.
Yeah, he takes away her computer.
So he takes away her computer. That's where we're getting to. And they sneak into his office by convincing the wild child to turn off the breaker, which gets the dad out of the house for long enough for Susie to dial the modem of the computer that they are trying to talk to. She then gets into it somehow.
Is able to get the location of the machine that she's in so she can print them out like coordinates
somewhere to figure out in the Nevada desert, basically.
Yeah, figure out where they're supposed to go.
And then they... Argyle is struck with immediate love and Eden as well. Eden.
Oh, that was funny. With just I don't even remember what their conversation was leading up to it. But it's Eden was like, when you find that brat, smack her for me or something, because Eden, they're both supposed to be babysitting, but it's just the one doing everything, and Susie's just doing something else. She's like, smack her for me if you find her.
Oh, she was on the roof fixing the satellite.
But Argyle's like, I'll smack her for you. I'll do anything for
you. I'll do anything for you. And then they find both of them just hotboxing in the van afterwards, which was really funny.
Yeah, while they're sneaking into the dude's office to get the coordinates, they're just getting high out in the van.
That was pretty funny. And then they rush off to
that's all we see of them.
And that's it.
They're off.
Shoot, that is basically it for this episode, with the exception of, did we talk about Elle yet? And Dr. Brenner?
No.
Okay, so
there's still quite a bit we haven't talked about.
Okay, so let's get to that stuff then.
The stuff with Elle and Brenner and all the kids. I know, was it last week we were talking about trying to figure out how many kids there were?
Right.
He mentions number 17 in this episode.
Oh, so
there's at least that many.
Okay.
And it was one of the younger ones, because he always, whenever they cut to them and they're in the rainbow room, the rec room, he always tells one of them to open the door. And in this episode, it was 17.
Okay.
So there's at least that many.
That's a lot of freaking children.
Yeah.
Man, this guy's a psycho.
And not all of them are actually there. There's not 17 children still. Because 8's not there.
The
8's not there.
Yeah.
And 8 is mentioned in this episode by Henry.
1 is also absent. We don't know where.
1's not there. There's a couple that are missing, but there's been at least 17 of them.
Shoot.
But yeah, in this episode is where we get kind of the circle game with the kids kind of trying to telekinetically push each other out of the circle.
It's a pretty sadistic game, really, because 2 is clearly got some anger management issues and just
yeah, he's the oldest of the bunch and is clearly the most other capable of the bunch, and yeah, it's throwing everybody else against the wall.
Yeah, it was sanctioned child fighting. It was pretty rough. But Elle is able to fight back and throws him into the wall, embarrassing him in front of all of the other children, including his personal little gang of the elder students.
Yeah, because you have 2, 3, 4, and 5. I believe those are
all the eldest.
Are all the next to eldest 4. Aside from 1 that we don't see.
Right.
So we have, 2, and then you have 3, 4, and 5.
And we get a shot of Henry, the caretaker / intern, getting tortured for giving Elle advice.
Right, because he's, trying to help Elle out earlier on, telling her, stuff, because he's talking to her about 1, and, that he knew 1 as well, and, he tells her that, Papa doesn't always tell the truth.
Right.
Sometimes he lies, starts planting little seeds of doubt inside her mind.
And also telling her how she can tap into,
a memory that makes you sad and angry.
Which is the greatest connection for the psychic abilities that the kids have.
Right.
Which she's able to do. She thinks of her mother and the pain of her mother being, tortured, I believe is the memory.
Yeah, tortured, and basically what we see in season 2 when she goes to see Mama, and we see that whole sequence with her mom kind of
being
getting
lobotomized.
getting into the facility and getting into the room with Jane and 8.
Yeah. And then she is then subsequently lobotomized for...
Yeah, through electrotherapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, turned into a vegetable so that she can't give it away. So, yeah, she wins, and obviously the other children are pretty butthurt that she wins because she embarrassed the the leader.
Yeah.
Henry gets tortured.
2 got humbled, and he didn't like it because, they gang up on Elle after that.
Yep.
And the second time watching it, kind of a goofy-looking scene.
It is. The cuts are a little bit too jarring. The psychic, tosses her around.
Yeah, because just like pulling really her like 2 feet this way and like 2 feet that way, just back and forth between the circles.
I guess if you were
I get what it's supposed to be, where it's kind of emulating, rather than kids pulling you in different directions like you would be if you were just being pushed around.
They're just chucking you psychically.
Yeah. So I get what they're going for. It just looked a little weird. They're just
humiliating her, and it doesn't really play the way they want it to. But it achieves the purpose of what they are going for. And then basically, I think that's it. What else did you want to talk about?
So, the stuff in like that particular scene, the bullying scene with Elle, 2, 3, 4, and 5, just felt a little awkward.
Yeah.
Like, I get what they're going for. I understand it. It's just like the actual visual of everything happening was a little weird.
Yeah.
The biggest part I didn't like, and I don't know that it's because it's not necessarily because it's badly done. I just don't like it. You guys know by now, I don't like Jason.
Yeah.
Jason.
Forgot about Jason.
I cannot wait for him to get his comeuppance because I do not like him. And we get the town meeting.
Child for douchiness.
Yeah, we get the town meeting where the police are like, telling everybody, because up to this point, the police have not publicly said who their suspect is. They haven't told anybody who they're looking for.
Because obviously you don't want to create a lynch mob.
Exactly, even though there has been between certain people up to this point anyway. But the police have a little town meeting, and they tell them that Eddie Munson is their primary suspect. And, the town starts freaking out because the police are implementing a curfew as well.
Yeah. And true to form, in this particular time period in the 80s, the Satanic Panic was a real deal.
Yeah.
And everybody was freaked out about Dungeons and Dragons, like poisoning children's mind, and you had...
Yeah, and having satanic cults tied to it with the D&D, with metal music and all this.
There were literally even...
For sure.
There were hearings in Congress, actually, special hearings, where rock stars were actually called in to give testimonies about the lyrical content of their music.
Yeah.
And that's where we get parental advisory on specific albums that came from this time period. I remember watching the lead singer from Twisted Sister go in and read a prepared statement by his lawyer.
Twisted Sister, isn't that Dee Snider?
Yeah, in front of this hearing that was put on by a couple of senators. It was like a McCarthy witch trial kind of thing.
Right.
Which I get what they were going for. There was a lot of stuff. I mean, the 80s is really when boundaries started to get pushed, and obviously nowadays we have some really vile stuff that gets passed on to children in the form of music. If you don't share that opinion, I'm sorry. But there's some really bad stuff that kind of had little tiny seeds that started in the 80s. Obviously, if you listen to 80s music and then you listen to modern music, it's kind of a joke.
Yeah. The concerns that people had for music in the 80s
is like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And
nothing compared to some stuff that exists nowadays. So
sodomy, child abuse, drug abuse, I mean, domestic abuse, just awful, awful, terrible things that are just in pop music. And no one cares. No one bats an eye. So desensitization, Illuminati. Anyway, moving on.
But the whole stuff with Jason
whips everybody up into a frenzy. He gets everybody all freaked out that Eddie's calling on Lucifer to murder these people.
He's a vessel for Satan.
Yeah, and the entire town buys into it because...
Except for the main character's parents.
Right, which I do have to point something out. As a Protestant Christian and having parents that were around in this time period, nobody's that dumb. This isn't 1850, and no one is saying, if she's a witch, then she'll float. Like, it's not, the logic is not that far removed from what we have today. And it was just so unbelievable for me. That scene did not play the way they wanted it to, where, like, this entire room full of people are like, yeah, he's calling on Lucifer. It's like, no,
I get what they're going for.
And this is supposed to be a small town that is clearly very religious. They hint at it several times. That it, everybody goes to church together, or church is together. It's a small town in the 80s.
And Jason even brings up several Bible verses over the course of the season. One in this episode, I forget which one he brings up.
Quoted out of context.
Is it in Romans?
I believe so.
It's, I'm trying to remember what it is.
You could look it up real quick, but taken out of context, obviously, for the sake of just drawing attention to what's going on, which I always kind of just have to roll my eyes anytime a Protestant congregation is depicted in films, because it's never in a positive light. Like, if you ever see a Christian community in a positive light, they're almost always Catholic, because the world can't conceive of a Christian community that is not Catholic, apparently. No shade against you if you're Catholic. Just happen to think you're wrong. But not too wrong, I might add. But yeah, it was kind of always a little frustrating to me how it's like, oh, you're Protestant? You must be retarded. Jason's just whipping everybody up into a frenzy like we were saying, and I despise how they just play the townspeople out of being
again,
so
I get what they're going for, because, like, for that decade, like Luke had mentioned, the Satanic Panic, like,
it's a real
thing that happened, and it's not as difficult to whip a group of people into a frenzied mob. It's not as difficult as people might think.
Yeah, as we clearly saw last summer with all of the looting and rioting, which clearly was not that hard at all to get all those people riled up, even though a little different, but still.
So, assuming that the entire town is not there, and we do see people at the meeting that do not follow.
It's probably clearly just that
but it's still
the people who cared the most were at the meeting. But still, it's just kind of unbelievable that, like, the one guy just gets up and walks out, and everyone's kind of like, well, are we all just gonna leave now? Like, is this it? And he's like, what are you waiting for? Let's go hunt them down. It's like, get your pitchforks and your torches. It was just,
it felt a lot like that, and it did play, not as the way they were wanting it to, I don't think.
No.
Unfortunately.
For the non-religious audience watching, probably didn't pick up on that, but as a Christian, and as a Protestant, I really am sick and tired of seeing not only my faith, but also just like the people that I know that also adhere to this faith, even from other denominations, just get labeled as being, I guess, childlike in their understanding of the world. Right. It's just stupid. But that's really the only thing. Jason is the most unbelievable part about that whole thing, though. His speech is just hard to watch.
I said it in the first episode too.
Yeah, like Jason, who made this kid like speaker? Like,
it's just
who died and made you God?
It's just weird. Like, the show has like enough villains going on. Like, we don't need a worse version of Billy.
And Billy was believable because the kid was just a dick. For good reason. He was abused, and so therefore he hated the world and had like.
That being said, though, the dude that is playing Jason.
Doing a good job. It. Yeah, he's really killing it. Absolutely.
He's killing it.
He's like somewhere between like Hitler Youth and like just this like demented
Hitler
like,
Youth and Southern Preacher son is kind of where he's meeting
like
in the middle.
Leave It to Beaver meets like Hitler Youth. It's just like this weird mix up and it doesn't work. But he's killing it though. He's right though. He is selling it.
Yeah, he's absolutely selling it. The acting across this episode as a whole. Probably an easy 8 for me, I think.
I agree with that. Yeah. It's good. Acting's very believable, very natural, delivered really well. Even the parents, like even the characters we've never seen before, like Lucas's dad. I don't believe we've ever seen him before.
We may have. We've seen him before. I know for a fact we've seen him before.
Have we?
I don't remember if
I must have just lost it.
I don't remember if we've heard him like interact with anybody before.
But he does though in this episode.
Yeah.
And so does Lucas's mom.
Yeah, we get Lucas's parents, we get the Wheelers, and we get Dustin's mom. Yeah, because those are the main group of sane parents that are
right. And all their kids clearly know each other and have been like best friends forever. So they clearly all know each other really well.
And when they're back at the Wheelers' house, and the mom, what's her name? Karen.
Yeah.
And Karen is just like, we do our kids are not killers, Ted. Yeah. And Ted just like, don't you put words in my mouth.
Don't put words
he looks
in my
over
mouth.
at Luke's dad like, she's always doing that. She's
always doing that.
And it's hard to hear that line because it's just in the background because she's calling the police.
Yeah.
Karen is.
And he just says it in that just completely level monotone voice that he uses for everything. Yeah. Like, don't put words in my mouth. She always does that. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, Ted.
Karen the Karen.
One of the, sneaky best characters of the whole show, Ted, for sure. The story, everything continues to gel very well.
Oh, yeah. It flows so naturally from one thing to the next. And again, throughout this entire season review, I have consistently mixed up events because, and the reason I say that is because these episodes just gel together so well. It's so hard to keep them
because there's
separate.
Some stuff that we've watched, whether movies or shows, that just have weird inconsistencies between shots even.
Yeah,
and cutting between scenes.
And
where
this show
things
just
don't
flows
make sense
together so well.
Stranger Things does not have that problem at all.
Yeah,
I think the writing continues to be very well. I would
stellar.
Give this one a 9.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
especially the very ending. I love how they tease the possibility of Steve dying.
Yeah, where it ends with you not knowing what's actually going to happen.
Right, and all the older kids.
Yeah, it's basically just a cliffhanger. It's not anything groundbreaking.
No, but they get all the older kids together in the same room. Finally, Steve is with his peers again since the first season.
Right, because he's always been the babysitter.
Always, yeah. And we get Nancy clearly going after him, which they're hinting at potential possibilities for them getting back together again. Because Jonathan is not in the picture anymore.
Robin is the one that brings it up.
Yeah, she does multiple times about how Steve would not do the things he does if he did not still care about Nancy, and Nancy would not do some of the things that she does if there wasn't something still there. So
Robin is the one that actually brings up the possibility of Steve and Nancy getting back together.
Right.
And Nancy gives her whole response is basically, I forget exactly what she says, but talking about her and Jonathan's relationship, they're not good right now.
Right.
And they're still together.
Yeah.
It's okay, but they're not good right now.
And if you know anything about long-distance relationships, you know that they rarely, if ever, work out.
Yeah. Not a great idea.
It's not. No.
Just not.
It's hard enough for adults. Never you mind when you're 18 years old and you don't know anything about anything. And all you know is just raging hormones and, emotional chaos. Because that's the definition of being a teenager is just chaos.
Yeah. We get a little more of the Upside Down in this episode.
I love the Upside Down. Every time I see it, it's so cool. They always do just such a good job of selling the demented, twisted inverse of everything that is in Hawkins.
Yeah, because we mainly see it toward the end when Steve gets pulled through. I think it's the only time we really see the Upside Down in this episode.
And it's the empty lake. Lover's Lake is completely empty, and there are boats everywhere, and the vines are just completely, everywhere. And I will say, it is getting progressively worse, because when we saw the Upside Down in the very first season, it was not nearly so overgrown and as, controlled by, the hordes of evil that they are now.
I'm sure we will talk about the Upside Down in depth.
Oh, yes.
After later episodes.
Yes, we will.
But the visual effects...
Stunning.
Still good. I don't know about stunning.
The bats, not so much.
Yeah, the bats weren't great.
Scenery always sells it for me. I love it. I love
with the Upside Down specifically. Upside Down
and the
itself.
sound effects, too. The pairing of the sound effects with the scenery and the lightning strikes in the background.
It is always really good.
It is really ethereal and very
I've watched some stuff lately that's just kind of...
meh.
Again, we've talked about where everything has to come together with your sound design for the scene, the atmosphere you're creating, the score that's behind it, and the visuals you're putting on screen.
Singular
all of it
purpose
works,
of vision.
It just is so good. And I've watched a few things recently where it's it's really tough when you have one of those things that just stands out oh, that was not good. That just stands out. That wasn't it. That wasn't it. Sorry, guys, but that just wasn't it.
Right.
But this, it's all it.
Really good.
Visual effects, I could probably go...
I give it an 8.5.
I'll go 8 with you.
Okay. 8's good.
Editing, I don't think the editing had to do as much as the previous episode. As far as keeping the flow of the episode going. Because the stories were a little more engaging in this one.
Elle getting bullied was the only bad editing sequence.
I don't think it was the editing that made it bad for me.
If they would have pulled back and you could watch her getting chucked between child to child, that would have made it look better. But because it did
kind of cut between each and every one, where it was very clearly just them setting up a camera at a different angle than her stumbling in that direction, and then they cut and they go to a different position with the camera and she stumbles in a different direction.
It didn't work.
Yeah.
Maybe for a second, but then after the fourth time, it was okay.
That's what it felt like they were doing, and using the editing just to try and make things a little more frantic, and it was weird.
Yeah.
So I'd give the editing a 6 on this episode.
Yeah, same.
It's not terrible.
That alone definitely takes me out of it.
But it's not as good as previous episodes. The cinematography, I'm trying to think if there's anything specific that they do with the camera that's interesting or outside the norm.
No. Other than watching the camera transition from the water to the dry ground as Steve gets pulled out of the upside down.
Sure.
That was cool.
Yep.
That's about it, really.
There's not really any sequences or scenes that really stand out to me as far as the cinematography go.
Yeah, not really.
Which means it was it wasn't distracting. It was good.
Agreed.
What do you think?
I'd give it an 8.
An 8?
Yeah.
I think 7. There's nothing stands out this was a really great shot and this worked really well.
Sure, I'll go 7 with you. 7's probably fair.
Seems better. Yeah. Score and soundtrack we already kind of touched on. We don't get a whole lot more music in this, which I am fine with. I love the score. Yeah. And it all punches in exactly where it needs to. And I like how it plays in with a lot of the sound design at times as well, especially in the Upside Down and that dinner scene with all the prisoners where you get the horrible sound effects of people eating.
Oh, yeah, I hate that.
And just slurping and crunching on stuff. And you start out with that and it's super loud and super piercing. And it slowly gets quieter and quieter. Now, it is because everybody's not eating, they're slowly just start listening to Hopper and Antonov speak, but then everything else in the background starts to die out as well, and it's just the little bit of the score that's in the background and them talking, the sound design and the audio mixing,
and it does get very ominous.
And that's an easy 8 for this episode too, because it's always on point. The score and sound itself, same as it's always been. What have we been giving it? A 7 or 8?
Yeah.
Which one? 7 or 8?
I think 8.
Remember. 8? Maybe. That's what we'll go with now. Set deck, costume, wardrobe has been consistent all the way through.
Yeah.
We get a little more tech in this episode, which is
8, though.
Very on brand for the time. So yeah, 8 there. I don't think that's a problem.
Just tallying up our scores real quick.
Yeah, I'm just writing as we go. Directing.
Aside from that bully scene and the stupid speech that they ripped off straight from Footloose's town hall meeting, it was good. But I do have to detract from those 2 scenes because I thought they were done poorly.
Yeah, not done as well as they probably should.
So I give it a 7.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't go any higher than that, I don't think. Not for me.
Everything else is great. They
overall
just
enjoyment.
Don't sell those 2. I liked it. I did like the episode with the exception of those 2 things, so I'd say overall enjoyment was probably 7.5.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I go 8.
Not my favorite episode by far. The ending was definitely got way better, but it was just kind of cringy to watch in those 2 scenes, especially just the chaotic shift in cameras that just didn't sell the whole psychic thing. For a show that has as big a budget as they do for Stranger Things, they definitely could have gone with a wire harness and just pulled her in different directions.
Yeah,
and that would have looked way better. Did not
feel like they did that at all.
No, that the actress was definitely just stumbling in the direction she was supposed to have been shoved psychically, and it just didn't work.
All right, so that brings our final score for episode 6 of Stranger Things up to 76.5.
That's fair. Yeah.
Which is basically like, 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Like,
definitely looking forward to the later episodes, which this is the last of the slower episodes. Everything
next is episode 7, which is the last episode of the first part.
They just drop the hand grenade and walk away. Like with the following episodes, there's going to be some really crazy stuff that's going to happen.
The next 3 are going to be a lot.
Really intense.
A lot of stuff to talk about, for sure.
So that brings this week's episode of How Good Is It Really to a close with Stranger Things episode 6.
Yep.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a like, and if we've earned it, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below and let us know what you did or did not like about the episode or the review that we just did. If you didn't like the episode, thanks for watching anyway, and Jeremiah.
And if you are listening to us over on Spotify, thank you very much. If you would leave us a rating and follow us over there, that would help out a great deal as well. And we will see you next time.
Later.